please subscribe and don't forget to press the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload a new video.
Welcome back. Well, it's the first trading day of September and we'll focus on auto companies as usual because it was a weak show in August sales numbers when it comes to the auto companies this time. Kerala floods hit the Maruti numbers while the Hero MotoCorp's numbers were in line with expectations. Only M&M and Tata Motors actually reported a better than expectation numbers. Now, Sonia joins us with more details on that. Sonia, good morning. Tell us, how did the numbers look like?
Well, as you rightly pointed out, it was really a mixed bag this time around. So Maruti's numbers were weak on expected lines. The Kerala floods have impacted the sales. As we know, 8% of Maruti's sales comes from the Kerala market. And, it's in the utility vehicle segment, the Ertiga, etc., where we have seen a big fall this time around. So overall numbers are looking weak. The total sales are down by 3.5%. The domestic sales are down by 3%. You can attribute the domestic weakness to Kerala, but there's also been a big export weakness this time around, and that won't go down well with the street. Export sales are down by 10.5% for Maruti. For Hero MotoCorp as well, growth has slowed down in line with expectations. No negative surprises there. The delayed festive season has led to a flattish growth this time around for Hero MotoCorp. The total sales growth has come in at just 1% at 6.85 lakh units. Was an expectation of 6.8 lakh units that Nomura had. Weak numbers coming in the tractor space as well. If you look at Escort's numbers, it's the lowest sales that Escort has seen since December of 2017, and exports are under pressure there as well. So total sales are up just 5% odd. The exports are actually down by 27%, and domestic sales are up by 6.3% odd. Apart from Escorts, if you look at the other numbers like M&M, Tata Motors, good set of numbers coming in across the board. The auto sales for M&M were better than estimated because of the traction in the LCV segment. So across the board, we're seeing LCVs do well. Ashok Leyland also reported a very good set of LCV numbers. For M&M, the auto sales went up 14%. Commercial vehicle sales were up by 25%. Passenger vehicle sales were up by about 2% or so. Passenger vehicle sales remain subdued, but it's the commercial vehicle piece that is doing exceptionally well this month. Tata Motors too, the commercial vehicle growth has been 26% and Ashok Leyland's second month running, commercial vehicle sales have looked exceptionally good. Remember, a lot of these companies like Ashok Leyland had scaled up their commercial vehicle guidance for the full year as well. So this is one piece that really stands out in this month's numbers. Back to you.
All right, Sonia, thanks a lot for that. Ashok Leyland is the one piece that really stands out in these numbers. But TCS buyback, the details are out. In fact, buyback begins on September 6th. Nigel is here with all the details of that buyback. Nigel?
Well, that's right, Mangalam. Over the weekend, you got all the details. There's a lot of people out there, a lot of retail audience as well. They were playing for this buyback, and now we have all the details. So the total number of shares that will be bought back will be around 7.6%. That's less than 2% of the total number of shares. Now, it'll take place by the tender route. That was more or less known as well. But, we'll move on to the more relevant details there. The average price, the price that they'll be buying back is at around 2,100 rupees per share. We knew that amount, and the total amount that they'll be spending is around 6,000 crores odd. So all these numbers more or less were known actually. But, we'll get to the more important details. This is how the dates really flowed out. On June 12th, they told the exchanges, yet we're going to be meeting on June 15th to undertake this buyback. Now, as you said, the opening date for that buyback is around September 6th. So from September 6th to September 21st, that's when in fact the buyback period is. And you'll get all your money, everything will be done by October 2018 odd. That's the price movement, and that's why people saw it as an opportunity. Because on the day they intimated the stock exchange that yes, we're going to be undertaking the buyback, it was sub 1,800 rupees per share. Then on the record day, that's on August 18th, the price was at around 2,013 rupees on a per share basis also. So yes, there has been a bit of a move. And on the date of that board meeting, that was at the stock price on that day was around 1,840 odd. The buyback price was around 2,100. So it was a 14% premium. So small shareholders, they said, well, this is an opportunity for us. Because remember, more than a year ago, they did a buyback. And at that point of time, all the shares you tendered in, all of them were bought back. So a lot of the small shareholders are quite excited in terms of this buyback. The earlier buyback price, if I adjust it, was at around 1,425, and the current buyback price is at around 2,100 rupees per share. So if you put it into context, you'll see that those small shareholders, they were happy at that point of time that all their shares got bought back. But in fact, in hindsight, the stock has gone way beyond that price. Now, you'll wonder whether or not you're a small shareholder. Importantly, record date was August 18, 2018. So on that date, if you held 99 shares, then in fact you will be qualified as a small shareholder, because on the record date, the buyback price was 2,100, but on the record date, if you had 99 shares and the share price was 2,012, then you will qualify under that 2 lakh category. Now, the total number of shares I told you was 7.6 crore shares that they'll be buying back. 15% of that is reserved for small shareholders. So that's close to around 1.14 crore shares will be bought back under the header of small shareholders itself. But you'll be wondering whether I'm a small shareholder or not. Well, in fact, you will be if you had 99 shares, and they've given out the ratio as well. If you qualify as a small shareholder, then 43 shares will be bought back out of the total 96 that you hold. So effectively, you know, that acceptance ratio is at around 44.5% odd. And if you're a general shareholder, then in fact the buyback, the acceptance ratio will be less than 2%. So clearly there was a bit of a, you know, opportunity for small shareholders out there as well, but only around 44.5% odd will be bought back odd. So let's take a couple of scenarios then that should come up for you on the screen. The buyback price, you know, if you bought at around 1,850 rupees, that's the day that in fact, you know, you had the the buyback price out at around 2,100 rupees odd. If you bought those shares in June 2018, then in fact, suppose you assume you bought it around 1,850 rupees. Now, 43 of those shares will be bought back at around 2,100 rupees per share. So your break-even point comes in at around 1,650 rupees. Let's assume you bought in at around 1,950 rupees. Then your break-even price, that's the price you're looking to sell the remaining 56 shares, that comes in higher. I think my director is going to be pulling that up shortly. Yes, case 2, that's in fact, you know, a break-even price comes in at around 1,835 rupees per share. So 2 scenarios is what we have taken up. You'll say, well, I mean, if all these, you know, if everything works according to plan, then I'll be making maybe 20,000 rupees if in fact I bought it at around 1,850 rupees odd. But keep in mind there are some transaction costs. 1,500 rupees will be your transaction cost. Time value of money you need to calculate of around 8 to around 10% for these 3 months that you've been locked into this buyback. And there'll be short-term capital gains as well of around 3,500 rupees on a per share basis. Not just that, very, very important, some of the investors out there would have got bonus shares, right? Then in fact, you know, the acquisition cost is 0. So effectively, the short-term capital gain will be more than 300 rupees on a per share basis. So that's just putting out all the details in terms of the buyback with regard to TCS for our small shareholders in particular. Back to you.
Look at the Asian markets, no respite there. We're seeing some mixed numbers coming in as far as the moves are concerned. The Hang Seng's actually slipped to the low point of the day, closing in on that 200-point downtick as we speak. The Shanghai too lower by about 0.5%. The Nikkei, of course, was lower at the open and now has extended those cuts. We're getting in early rates from Shanghai as well as Hang Seng, both of them lower. Korean index down by about 0.6%. The Taiwanese index as well as the Straits was lower. Remember, the Taiwanese index at the open was in the green, has now moved into the red. But one index which is still sticking around to its greens is the SGX Nifty, 11,750 held on. But the prominent Indian fund managers, they're not happy. They gathered in Mumbai to protest SEBI's ban on Indian FPI managers. Surbi joins in with the details. Surbi, what is likely to be on the agenda and what's going to happen?
Well, Mangalam, good morning. On the agenda is going to be an effort to really ratchet up some price because this is something that is causing a huge stir in the FPI community. Foreign portfolio investors where the managers, the asset managers are people of Indian origin or are NRIs. So what is this whole issue? It goes back to the 10th of April, and that is when SEBI issued its first circular, which essentially said that, first of all, if you are an FPI investor, if you are a foreign portfolio investor, you need to declare who is the beneficial owner or BO of that fund. There are several thresholds that will describe who is the BO. Depends on the structure of this fund. Now, if the fund is structured like a company, then anybody who owns more than 25% economic interest becomes the beneficial owner. If it is structured like a trust, then the threshold is even lower at 15%. And for FPIs that are coming in from quote-unquote high-risk jurisdictions, the threshold is as low as 10%. So basically, if you own more than 10 or 15% in a foreign fund, and if you are of Indian origin, then that's not permissible under these new rules. The funds have been given now an extension of the timeline till the 31st of December to either wind up these structures or wind up their positions or change these structures. And this has become a huge bugbear. The entire Indian origin foreign investor community is up in arms. They're saying this is discriminatory. They are going on to say that this is blatantly racist, that if, as long as, they're white-skinned and they have a white surname, then they can manage Indian money, but not otherwise. So we are expecting some fireworks. There's a press conference later this afternoon. We'll keep you updated.
Well, let's take a check of what's happening in the world of commodities. And Manisha Gupta, as always, joins us with the latest. Manisha, good morning. Over to you.
Hi, morning, and thank you so much for that. Well, we have started a new week and a new month with strength in US dollar back, and that seems to be weighing in case of commodities. Starting with the crude oil prices, where we have seen a decline in Asia today, and that's because there is increase in supplies from OPEC and US as well. If you look at the OPEC output for the month of August, that has increased and stands at 32.79 million barrels per day, which is a 2018 high. And the U.S. output also is back at 11 million barrels. You also have seen reports on how there has been increase in the output from Libya. The Iraq exports have hit record highs for the month of August, and that seems to be weighing onto the prices. Of course, the Iran sanctions and the fact that the Iran output or the exports has continued to decline in the month of August will continue to support prices today as well. The strength in US dollar also seems to be weighing onto the metal space, where you have seen the gold prices come back below $1,200 per ounce. Gold is now 8% down for this year. The U.S. rate hike expectations for the month of September also seems to be weighing on the metal space. So many of the industrial metals as well have started the day on a weaker note.
All right, Manisha, thanks a lot for that. The metals have started the day on a weaker note, but let's keep an eye out on the action coming in from the futures and options space. Remember, on Friday's trading session, which was the first session of the September series, the Nifty ended absolutely flat, but there are shorts in the system. They've entered the system. So the FIIs, they sold about 1,100 crores in index futures on day one of the new series. Not just that, we saw short addition to the tune of 15,000 contracts, which compares with long additions of around 2,000 odd contracts. So that's telling you that the FIIs who were long 64% at the start of the series have now become 60% long. Will be very interesting given the GDP data that came by, given the fact that the SGX Nifty is indicating an uptick. So that makes a case for the first hour high. If the first hour high is breached, there could be case for further short covering in the market itself. There was a purchase of 1,600 crores in index options. Out there, the FIIs bought protection on the downside. There were around 15,000 calls bought, but 30,000 puts bought. That's telling you that the FIIs are bracing themselves for the downside. But the downside also looks like it is protected, because there was more put writing than call writing. 18,500 all puts have been written. Maximum open interest at the 11,600 level. 11,800 call 2 has the maximum open interest. We saw some writing at 11,600 and 11,500, while 12,000 calls saw some bit of punt buying. In terms of stocks, remember the rupee is weak, so the rupee sensitives did well. We saw some long positions added on Mindtree, Tech Mahindra, as well as pharmaceutical stocks, the likes of Dr. Reddy's and Lupin. Yes Bank, that was the biggest loser on Friday's trading session, and that one saw a lot of short additions.